Hi Kaylee, this is Sister Finch. I was just looking at the design that you submitted for your final, and I love cactus designs. I think they're a lot of fun, and so I'm glad that you chose this design and that you're doing this design. There are a few things to keep in mind as we move forward with the design. I really like how you are playing with a complementary color scheme. You've almost got like a double complementary color scheme going on, which is fun to see. You've got the violet and the yellow are complementary colors, and then the red and green are also complementary colors. But for some reason, your color harmonies aren't working very well together. And there's a few suggestions that I'm going to make to be able to help with that. First of all, I think you need to consider your color saturation. It's important to desaturate the background and subordinating shapes as you have done a little bit with the subordinating shapes, but desaturating that background and then adding saturation to your focal point is really going to help draw the viewer's eye to your focal point. Another suggestion that I'm going to have you play with is um, the idea of creating some kind of atmospheric perspective with your design. So as things go back into space, they become uh, usually, light, definitely lighter in value, less color saturation, but it can either go back to a cooler background or a warmer background. And I think maybe that's some of the issue that you have going on here. You, um, you're getting cooler, but you still have a lot of warmth in your background. Also, you have these saturated colors right next to each other, which I think is kind of messing with the eyes a little bit. One's a little bit cooler, one's a little bit warmer. Um, but having those highly saturated colors right next to each other is a little bit deceiving on the eye, I guess. So I would consider desaturating the colors as they go back into space. Another thing as I'm looking at it, be careful of tangents in your design. This cactus shape I feel like is just meeting the bottom edge of the design. I want it to be either up a little bit more or to be cropped completely off of the design. Um, it's That's a lot better than having the shape sitting right at the bottom of the design. Another thing I want you to consider is consider adding some other shapes within the background. I notice that you've kind of staggered some of these shapes randomly. They're kind of isolated from one another, and so it'd be nice to figure out a way to connect those shapes or have them seem more interrelated with one another. So those are my suggestions as far as the design. I opened up a few different things for you to look at. Um, I just wanted you to consider how the shapes are layered. This one you've kind of got, these shrubs in the foreground. This would be a good way to interconnect some of these shapes because, I mean, in reality, you're not going to have, just one random shrub. Um, that they're going to play with each other in one way or another. Um, Even in this design, you'll kind of see, they're kind of creating this horizontal line with some of the shrubbery. You've got some larger ones, some smaller ones around the cactus itself. But you'll see how some of these shapes, I mean, some of them are still kind of isolated in that design, but you'll see how they are interrelating with one another. This is a good example of things going back into space and getting lighter in value. Um, let's see. Let's see how these, you've got these rocks and you've got these cactus shapes that are interrelating with one another. Keep in mind that for your design, you're still going to want to create a focal point with a highly saturated, definitely make that cactus in the front your focal point. You've got it in the golden section and I think it's working well. These are some different cactus shapes you might want to consider adding into your design just to give it a little more variety instead of keeping them, which one was yours? This one? Instead of keeping them, just give them a little bit more variety. Things will get smaller as they go back in space too, so you can consider, having some larger, not as large as this, but some larger shapes in the background, and then having them getting progressively smaller, lighter in value, less saturated as they go back into the picture plane. So those are just some things to consider. I just did the search. I'll scroll through so you can kind of see. And those are kind of like some of the shapes that you have. But that's a definitely landscaped, where yours is more an outdoor natural setting. Um, so keep that in mind. This is kind of fun and interesting how they've done the shapes there. And then you've got your mountains, you could put in the background still. Um, See how these ones, how in this design it gets progressively uh, lighter. These mountains not so much, but that's because you've got a shadow going on. It looks like, and the sun's still shining on these other mountain shapes, but but keep in mind some of the atmospheric perspective as well. And then I wanted to show you, it would be interesting to add, so as you're doing this in the background and adding, some subordinating shapes of cactus or whatnot in here, think about making your focal point, giving it emphasis by adding detail work, saturation, things like that. And so this one. So I just this is another search I did. I think I did cactus design. But I want you to consider, what can I do with shape? Because as your design sits, you've just got one solid shape, which has all these, nice, interesting, I don't know what you call them, cactus leaves coming off. I know that's not the name for it, but think about what you can do to make that shape more interesting. You can overlap some shapes. You can give different values to some shapes. This one's a really interesting with, the juxtaposition of some green and blue indicating like light and shadow on the design or on the cactus shape. But go through and see what you can find as far as, adding some dimensionality through layering of shapes to your design. You might want to consider adding, some striation to the cactus shape. Um, adding some interesting needlework would be fun. Um, Trying to see if there's any other really good, fun ideas here. Since some of your subordinating shapes, you can add some detail with. I wouldn't add as much. I would keep the center of interest on your focal point, so don't add as much detail in your subordinating cactuses. I would keep the detail work strongest on your focal point. But those are, this is kind of fun. Where did that? Oh, that's a flower. But just keep in mind some, adding some detail work to your cactus shape, I think will also be nice. Okay, so I don't want to make this video too long. There you are. So just keep that in mind. Move your focal point, up a little bit so it's not a tangent, adding some interesting subordinating cactus shapes here, creating that atmospheric perspective and letting your color harmonies work better together. Typically things become more the color of the atmosphere. I'll just show you this. This is not yours, this is Renee's design. But you'll notice how the colors will get, like in this one with the yellow sun, yellow background, the colors are getting progressively warmer as they go back in space. And that's kind of what she was going for here. But they will go toward the color of the atmosphere. So that final, whatever you have in the sky, your colors need to get progressively more like that color. And this will be your lightest value color, and then they'll be darker as they come forward, or you could say they start darker and they get lighter as they go back. So that's how atmospheric perspective works, and I'd like to see you incorporate a little bit of that into your design. But keep it up. This is a great start, and I look forward to seeing what you do for the final. Don't feel like you have to implement all of those suggestions. but definitely make improvements to what you have here. Have a good week, Kaylee. I look forward to seeing your final design. Okay, bye-bye.